Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming. Today, I'm just going to take you through not provided and really how to move forward given the keywordless data world that we live in now. But to give you a bit of background about who I am, I'm Daniel, Technical Director at MediaWorks. So we're a digital marketing agency specializing in SEO, PPC, and CRO. We're headquartered in Newcastle with an office in London, and we are currently at 75 staff, and we work with these types of brands. So these are the people we've got to look at on a day-to-day basis and really understand, how do we show return on investment now that Google's changed the goalposts and that we can't see keyword data, and understand really how people are being driven to the website. So in terms of a brief overview, because I attended one of the sessions this morning, and most of the people in that session didn't really know what not provided was. So to give you a bit of background about what it is and how it's changed the landscape. Essentially back in late 2011, Google initially looked at encrypting keyword data for everyone that was signed into their Google account. So this essentially meant anytime you typed something into Google, previously you could get all of that information within Google Analytics or any analytical package you used. But it meant that if someone was signed in, you got the keyword as not provided. So that meant there could be any number of combinations of keywords or singular keywords that you didn't necessarily know what was generating that traffic. And then through that timeline, we can see that that gradually increased in terms of the percentages that traffic was being driven in terms of not provided. And back in sort of September, October, Google rolled out the idea that they were going to fully encrypt all of the data. So essentially moving forward, we're going to get to a point where all of the keyword data we're now looking at in analytics is not available anymore. So we sampled this from back in October 2011 across a number of our clients. So the sample base is about 4 million visits a month, and we wanted to look at how much not provided increased in terms of that percentage of total traffic through the organic channel. And at the moment, we're looking at around 74.8% of that traffic having no keyword data. And as we say, that's going to move towards 100% moving forward. So really the idea is to have a look at how can we, from a strategic point of view, understand what people are typing into the search engines to really show return on investment and understand what is happening on the site and how people are getting there. So the easiest way to start really with looking at this data now that we don't have keywords is just really to go back to basics. To understand what we were doing at the very sort of early stages of analytics software, and having a look at things like total organic traffic, total organic revenue, and really get a gauge on how that's worked over time. So a lot of people never really looked at total organic because you wanted to break it down a lot more into branded and non-branded terms and understand that balance. So that meant you didn't really have a clear view. So what we do for our clients is we have two approaches to how we report. The main one is looking at a scorecard, and secondly looking at it from a graphical representation point of view. So here we can see an example of a scorecard which just looks at organic traffic and organic revenue on a monthly basis to really understand, what are those trends and how does that look. And then what we want to do is we really want to plot this. There's a lot of graphs in this presentation, so hopefully you can see it. But this really plots, as we say, organic traffic, organic revenue, so whether it's branded, non-branded, and really just gets you an understanding of that trend and how that works. And what we want to look at is just trending data. So we can see that, total organic traffic and total organic revenue have increased over time. And we want to be having a look, as we say, from a basic level, is that the consistency we've got, or has there been drops, and where have those drops existed? The next stage from an SEO point of view is obviously rankings. So this is a key thing that happened in the industry. A lot of people were saying that the rankings were starting to fade in terms of their value as a metric, but actually in a 100% not provided world, these are a lot more important. So we want to be having a look at how we perform against key terms that we want to rank for and we want to drive traffic from. So by measuring where we actually rank, we can understand how likely we are to drive traffic from those keywords. So if you haven't been tracking rankings, it's a key stage now to really look to review what you want to track and pretty much do them over head, mid and long tail terms. So have a look at those big vanity terms that you want to rank for. So for some of our clients it might be terms like sofas, but we want to drill that down into the mid tail, so having a look at things like leather sofas. Equally we want to look at long tail and have a look for people typing in black leather sofa and in 3-seater. From that, we can then take a gauge of how rankings are performing across the board and really understand how that traffic is being driven to the website. And as we say, from that ranking data, we can do a lot more in terms of drilling down and getting granular information out of it. So this graph really shows you, when we're looking at a particular client, all of the keywords that rank within the top 100 and the count of those keywords. So how many keywords are actually growing, so how much growth have we had in visibility, which will give us an impact when we compare that to traffic. We can also have a look at where those rankings are in terms of their position and what page they rank on, and try and work out if the traffic is related to specific keywords that are ranking on page 1, page 2. Because based on click-through rates, we can really see that the top 3 slots are where we're seeing traffic. So we want to have a look at the increases in that to give justification for where that traffic's coming from. But moving away from the basics, really what I want to say is how do we drill that down a lot more and understand things in a bit better detail. So really the key with anything analytical is really to get insight out of what you're looking at. So we have what we call an insight process with anything we do in terms of reporting and looking at performance. And the 4 stages are definition, investigation, analysis and actioning. So really the only thing that has changed with not provided is the definition. We've got to define new variables that we want to look at and then investigate them, analyse them and understand what we can action out the back of that. So the 2 things in terms of definition that we have still got are landing pages and ranking position. So really this is where we want to have a look to say how can we pull these 2 pieces of information together and then get some clearer insight out of it and understanding of what's happening on the website from a keyword type level. So one of the big things that we did early on in the not provided sort of rollout was to have a look at bringing rankings into Google Analytics. So you can see in this example here, while we don't know what the keywords are, which is where it says not provided, we can actually see what position that keyword was in and that drove the traffic. So we can see that there was 198 visits for a keyword that we don't know, or a number of keywords that we don't know, but they were in position number 1. And that drills down into further positions. I mean, this data can be a little bit temperamental in that sometimes the referral data can come through, sometimes it can't. So we're really running this on a sample to get a broad insight as to what's happening. And as we say, landing page is another one that we can look at. So again, we look to put in position next to landing page. So in this example, we can see that 142 visits were generated to the home page from a keyword that ranked in position 1. And this is a great one when you're looking at things like brand, non-brand split, because generally you're going to have a lot of your branded keywords being driven through the home page. So we can exclude that when we have a look to try and understand what is the impact on category, subcategory and product page traffic. So once we've done these adjustments, these are really what we're reporting on a monthly and quarterly basis for our clients. So again, from a scorecard and a graphical representation point of view, on the left, the scorecard, we look very much at year on year, month on month. So we get that idea of trend analysis and see what's changed. But we break that down by position. So we can see that, you know, in the example, we had 290,000 visits for keywords in position 1 in October, but year on year that was up nearly 75,000 visits. So we really get that understanding of, you know, keywords in position 1 are driving traffic, and we can do assumptions based on whether that's branded or non-branded. And then we can graph that, and we can really understand how that's grown. So really growth and that trending is the key thing to understand return on investment and how things are really performing. So in that example, we can really see that, you know, there's been huge growth in traffic from positions 1, 2 and 3. So October 2013, where you've got the blue, the orange and the grey, we can see that, you know, they contribute a lot more in terms of traffic than they did earlier on. So that's the key thing to look at from a overall traffic point of view. But the idea is then to understand what are your key priorities. So again, for clients that we work with, we have a look very much at areas that are targets for them in terms of sections of the site. So with larger e-commerce sites, there'll be products and product sets which are more important or have higher margins, and they're the areas really you want to focus on from a digital marketing point of view, and they're the areas you want to push from an SEO point of view. So again, what we look to do is we look to do sectional traffic, and we look to see how does this break down by specific parts of the website. So this is where we take into account landing pages, and we understand the position that that keyword was in to drive the traffic to that part of the website. So in this example, we can see again on the left with the scorecard we're looking at sectional traffic towards a computer section of a website. And we can see the growth towards that section. So that's really when we can then break down and say, we're investing this amount in driving traffic to this part of the website. How much of that traffic was generated from positions 2 downwards or 1 downwards, and we can really understand, how much impact we're having from what we're doing on that campaign. So again, we can see a lot more growth here in terms of traffic being driven from position 1 and position 2 and 3 towards the computer section. So the next stage is really to look at how do you get this information within Google Analytics. So this is a sort of brief description of how to do it. If anyone needs any more advice, we've got a stand further down E28. We can give you some more info. But essentially it's just this idea that when Google lists an organic page, it gives direction to what position that listing is in, and we can pull that into Google Analytics itself. So we set up 3 stages, as we say, back in early 2012, late 2011, to pull in this data. So pulling in the referral data basically says, have a look at where that position is, and put that in anytime we look at keyword rankings. So we replace keyword term with keyword term and position. And thirdly, we take landing page and we replace the landing page info with landing page and position. One of the important things to note here is that we do this on a separate profile within Analytics. So what we don't want to do is skew the original data with positions. We create a whole new profile, so this is a sort of subset of data that we can look at and investigate separately. Then the next stage that we look at in terms of not provided is really this notion of integration, and this is probably a key part of everything that anyone's looking at now from a digital marketing point of view, is how do you bring all of the channels and all of the services you do into one area to investigate and bring them together. It's this idea of service integration and internal departments working together and really getting a gauge of how that works. The same really applies for analytics and the issues surrounding not provided. So we've developed an internal toolkit that really looks at pulling in all information we can around things within the SEO remit and looking at things like links data, but more so with the analytical data is what can we get out of that data we've got, and what can we build that will give us more of an understanding of what's happening. So the first one that we look at here is our daily dashboards. So again, this is just a free tool called, I think it's a paid tool called Scythe. It's inexpensive. It gives you lifetime membership, and really this pulls data in from Google Analytics and allows you to have set dashboards that update pretty much real time as Google Analytics updates. So what we have is all of our consultants have these dashboards for all of their clients, and they can really understand little increases and decreases in key metrics, so that if something does massively change, we can understand why it's changed or investigate it quickly, rather than just trying to say we've seen a change, why did it occur. We can normally see growth in those changes. It also allows us to see things like not provided visitor values, so we can understand what is the growth for each client in terms of the not provided data, and break that down so that the client understands potentially at what point they're going to get to a sample base that they can't then decide whether it's branded or non-branded. The next tool that we've developed is something we call the core. And again, this is the idea that because we don't have end keyword data, we don't know actually what keyword drove the traffic. How can we understand what keywords are related to what page and what potentially will drive the traffic? So here what we do is we have a look at pulling in keywords that are pretty much all of the variations that someone would search around your product base, around your service base. And we look to pull in what ranking that is in terms of the listing. We pull in the search volume, so here we use the AdWords keyword planner to understand search volume. We pull in some other metrics like domain authority, page authority. We also do that across competitors to really understand, what is driving traffic for competitors. And when we take that, we can then understand the likelihood of what is driving traffic to our site, to our client sites, and associate that to specific pages on the site. This also gives you a good insight to have a look at when you're doing things around strategy to what keywords should you target. So now that we don't know what keywords are driving the traffic, these are potential areas of focus you can go with in terms of understanding key target areas and what keywords are associated to that area. Then another tool that we built in terms of understanding the commonalities between traffic increases and seasonality is looking at things like weather data. So we have a look to say, specific sections of the site will be heavily influenced by things that change seasonally. So looking at things like average hours of sunlight and plotting that against the traffic to specific sections on the site, like the summer section in terms of shorts or t-shirts, we can understand whether it's likely to be a non-branded increase because those hours really reflect the amount of traffic. And we can see there in that example that traffic really does spike when the hours of sunlight are higher for those sections of the site. Equally the same with rainfall. So for clients in the fashion sector, we want to have a look at, when rainfall increases, does the traffic to those pages within the summer section fall? And again, it does. And then the final tool that I've put up is what we call our top keywords report. So what we look at here is this idea that we've always said, let's look at keywords, understand which ones are associated to what sections or what pages on the site. But really what we want to do is we want to track that, and we want to put that in a place that we can store and see what impact it's having, and then compare that against traffic. So again, what we look at is specific page URLs. So in terms of our toolkit, we're able to do this across every page on the client website. We have a look at what keywords are associated to that page, and for this we can have a look back at historical analytics data where we did have the keyword info, and we can use things like the core tool to understand what likely keywords there would be to that section. And again, we plot that search volume, we plot the rankings, but then we plot the traffic to that page over time, and we can really understand the difference between the search volume and the traffic. And if there's a correlation, we can really associate the likelihood is that for longer tail keywords, that's what's driving the traffic, and understand areas where we can put more focus from an SEO point of view. And again, we do this to say this is the highest volume phrase. We try to associate a lot of keywords to a URL so we can understand collective search volume and how that compares across the board to the collective traffic to that page. Then the other thing to look at in terms of not provided, so everything before were pretty much definitive metrics that we could look at and try and compare, but we also try and take into account assumption measures. So what we define as an assumption measure is where we compare two sets of data that aren't really comparable, but putting them together and segmenting them down, we can really try and ascertain whether it was branded, non-branded, or it had some influence from offline marketing campaigns. So these are a few examples that we look at again for clients, and very much this is bespoke client by client to understand which one is more important. But a good one to look at when you try and understand branded traffic to the homepage. So a lot of clients have the problem that the homepage used to generate a lot of traffic for their brand, but it also used to generate a lot of traffic from non-branded searches that they rank well for. So one example would be a client of ours, SES, their homepage ranks for sofas, but equally they do a lot of offline activity and drive a lot of brand traffic through the SES term. So what we want to have a look at is homepage traffic and compare that to branded search volume. So every time they run a TV advertisement or they sponsor a TV program, we can have a look and we can see that search volume generally goes up. So we can look at that keyword planner, see search volume going up, and plot that against the traffic to the homepage. And where we can see spikes in search volume and spikes in traffic, we can then associate that to branded terms. And equally the same with direct versus organic traffic. So the idea is that if you do a lot of offline activity, you're likely to see a spike in your direct traffic, because that's more than likely where you're going to push people is via the URL to the site. So plotting direct traffic against organic traffic will allow you to see commonalities between the two channels and associate that to brand or non-brand. Then rankings by position versus traffic by position is really what I touched on earlier with if we pull in rankings to analytics and we have a look at that as an independent metric, but we compare that to what we saw at the back to basics slides of where we rank purely from a rankings point of view through our rank tracking software, do the two compare naturally and are we seeing commonalities there? And then finally, this idea of offline versus targeted landing pages is really again key for anyone that has a good presence offline. So a lot of clients do offline marketing and they really try to push people to the site. And now we don't know the keywords, we really don't know the impact of that. So what we want to do is we want to plot and annotate within Google Analytics that offline activity and how that's affected specific sections of the site that you were targeting with that activity. So if you're pushing, as we say, summer clothes, and you're doing that from an offline point of view, how is that offline activity? When did it launch? When did it go live? and when was each of the, if it's TV advertisements put on in terms of time. We can have a look at that and really drill it down and compare that to the traffic to those sections. So this is one example of where we've plotted an assumption measure. So this is the first one of homepage traffic versus search volume. And what we can see here is that in red we see the collective search volume for branded terms, and the blue is the homepage traffic. And then we trended that again. So what we can see here is that the trend is that actually collective brand search volume has gone down, but traffic to the homepage has gone up. So the likelihood here is that, or we can assume that it's non-branded traffic that's really driven that increase in traffic, and we can try and give that assumption measure that what you've done from an SEO point of view has really helped drive that traffic. Now obviously one of the key parts here is that we've developed a lot of this toolkit internally, and this isn't something that necessarily all digital marketers can do because they don't have that sort of capacity to build the tools. So there are some third-party tools that really give you assistance in understanding what's happening from a not provided point of view. So to touch through them, the first one really, which a lot of you may have used, is Searchmetrics. So Searchmetrics has always got us an independent validator on your visibility, but now it's a great way to understand how much are you growing in the search results in terms of rankings for keywords with volume. And they also break it down into your rankings by keyword, so we can have a look at each keyword and understand where does Searchmetrics think our traffic is really coming from in terms of what they define as their traffic index, where we rank in terms of position, and really use that as a broad indicator of what is driving traffic. Then Keyword Researcher isn't necessarily a tool that can give you really a metric on performance, but what it does do is it helps you a lot more when you're looking at long tail. So for a lot of sites that we look at, especially B2B and inquiry-led sites, is that we put a lot of effort into the content strategy to be around sort of question-based and informational type searches and content which matches up with that. So what we want to have a look at is what type of terms would people be searching for, and what type of questions or informational searches would they be doing. So Keyword Researcher basically looks at suggest type keywords from Google. So what we can do is we can put in singular and pluralized keywords and really drill down into questions that we think are relevant, and this will pull back a list of generated search results. So things like what do camera numbers mean, what do camera symbols mean, as potentially something you might do if you're a retailer for cameras when we're looking at things like FAQs. And then what we can do is we can associate these keywords to those sections within that site, and we can understand potentially what kind of traffic is being driven to these longer tail pages. And really this gives us a performance indicator when we're looking at things like content generation and having internal resource that's focused solely on content generation, and how do they understand the impact of what's being driven to their parts of the site. Then there's Webmaster Tools data. So while Google doesn't give us the correct or the full keywords referral data within analytics, what it does do within Google Analytics on the left-hand side, if you go into acquisition, search engine optimization, you can have a look at what they give you as the top queries to your website. So in terms of the actual values, we can see these sometimes are a bit hit and miss, and sometimes they're quite off when we compare them to old data. But this definitely works in terms of understanding what's upcoming, what is working, what is driving the traffic, not necessarily what those direct metrics are. So again, we can use this to understand what Google is saying we're getting in terms of impressions and clicks. We can look at their average position, and we can cross-reference all of this data against the data we're collecting from other sources. And this really allows us to get a broad understanding of what's happening across the board. And as we say, compare and make those assumption measures to say, if Google's suggesting these are the main queries that are driving traffic, these are the pages that are getting traffic, how do the two compare? Then the final one we can look at is AdWords data. So if you're not already getting paid data, it might be worth, even for a test trial, when you're looking to have a look from a strategic point of view of what keywords do we want to go for parts of the site, for the whole site, is to do an initial trial with paid data and see how that performs, what keywords are converting well, what drives a lot of traffic. And then from that we can have a look at what they call a paid and organic report. So that allows you to see keywords that have driven traffic through paid, but have also driven traffic organically. And that will give us pretty much similar data to what's in Webmaster Tools, because they pull from the same source, but we can use them to compare and understand, how does PPC compare to the organic channel, and work them together. So again, what we create for our clients is something called a search integration report. And this is really the search integration report and what's the broad terms that we look at. So the idea is that search really wants to come together and give you a combined digital return. What we don't want to do is have a PPC channel that's competing with your organic non-paid channel, because in essence what you want to do is you want to have the best digital return. So if you get more conversions for a certain keyword through the paid channel, then stick with it through the paid channel, but more so test it and try and go for it if we think we're going to get more visits and more traction in terms of revenue from the organic point of view. So what we do with this search integration report is we have a look at immediate opportunities, and this idea of cannibalization can occur. And because we don't necessarily know the keyword data, we use this paid and organic report to really understand how do the two balance and which one performs best. We can also use it to have a look, as we say, at keyword performance metrics, so things like sales, so we can understand from PPC which keywords drove the most sales. We can do that on the landing page level from SEO, but we don't know which specific keywords were driving the most sales. And that's more important for head terms, so where we have got a home page or category pages that go for a lot of high search volume phrases, which one of those actually is the one that we should target. And again, expansion. So as we say, from a strategic point of view, when we want to look to say how do we expand what we're doing, look for new areas of interest, and potentially this might be in terms of globalization, so looking at new markets and saying, how do people search in France and how should we move forward in that market, is to run that test PPC campaign and let that influence your strategy from an SEO point of view. Then secondly, we look at on-page testing. So this is the idea that with paid, what we can do is we can very much have a look at which pages work best, which ones perform best. And then with PPC, that can inform our SEO strategy, and we can go for pretty much the same keywords we did in paid for SEO. Then real-time data. So again, this is just the idea that paid allows you to see which keywords were driving traffic. So this allows us to see on a continual basis if there's any keywords that are upcoming and driving more traffic at a certain point in time. And that allows us to see, should this be an area of focus for that point in time in future months or next time in terms of year on year for our SEO strategy. And that implies in terms of traffic, and as we say, in terms of transactional data. So if we see that within PPC a set of keywords are driving a lot more sales in a set period, let's use those same keywords next year from an organic point of view. And then finally, as we touched on before, combined digital return. So this idea is that we don't want to have competition between the two, but if we have a search integration report, what we can do is we can focus on efficiency and really driving keywords through the channel that performs best. So that really brings the not provided element in terms of, this is how we inform strategy at the beginning stages, so this is how we can understand what keywords we want to go for. And then when we look at the back to basics and the integration, that really tells us from that strategy what performance have we got and how does that really reflect in terms of our return on investment and really return on impact from what we've done. So that's everything. If anyone's got any questions, as I say, we've got a stand further down at E28, or you can catch me now. And there are my details. Often people have questions afterwards, so feel free to drop me an email. Thank you.